Hi there, this is Jun Matsushita from iLab, and I'm going to talk to you today about the Safetag Toolkit and how to get started with it. Just to cover the topics that we're going to go through, just want to talk about why we've been developing a toolkit and some of the thinking behind it. What is it that we're talking about and what we have to show you today. Some of the concepts behind that. Then I'll go through a little demo and then show you a little bit in more detail how to do various things with the toolkit. And then we can talk about some of the things that we're looking for in the future. All right, so let's get started. So why is this project happening? Well, one of the things that I think we're focusing on is to look into how Safetag can be more useful to auditors in their day-to-day work. Really, whatever we put together, it needs to be really iterative because the priorities adjust all the time during an audit, and sometimes you have to plan without necessarily having all the information, and when you're on the ground, you may discover information little by little. So it's important for whatever solution, to adjust to the needs and be flexible enough that it doesn't feel like you're constrained by it. It's quite clear also that really as an auditor, you're in service of an organization, and that your work needs to be centered around their needs, and that you've established the goals together, and that you can track the progress of the audit and the result and the mitigations afterwards together. And so in some sense, some of the focus with this particular work around the toolkit is really to try and streamline what can be streamlined in sort of the auditing practice. So another concern is ways that the content's being used with the full guide and the curricula, and we want to make sure that we lower all the barriers to contribution and collaboration around this content so that it can be kept alive. And one of the best ways for it to be kept alive is that it's in use and that it's actively useful in the auditor's work on a day-to-day basis, hopefully. And not just to the auditor, but obviously to the auditing organization and so on. And there's a bit of context around this as well, because there's other projects going on, with Ronald doing some work around a minimum viable audit, and Carlos doing some work on reporting, and Shemus doing work on audit agreements. And so hopefully all of these tools that are useful to get started on an audit and make sure that the notes that you're taking and the results that you're gathering as you're proceeding with the audit, that all of that feeds into the reporting as smoothly as possible, possibly also in the audit agreement. All of that sort of hopefully will start fitting together in the toolkit. All right, enough talk. Let's do a little demo. So I'll go into more detail about how you can do the installation later in the how-to section. But once you've installed, you will have a Safetag command line tool, and we are going to right now start the toolkit. This is going to build the website locally and give you a link here. And as you see, this is the interface to navigate the Safetag content. So one of the features here is that you can search for, let's say, interviews, and this will take you to the activity content that used to be in the blue boxes in the PDF guide. As you see here, you can also check boxes here that corresponds to various categories, and these activities have been categorized according to the current structure of the guide. So for instance, if you go to user device assessment here, I'm going to need to clear the search. then you can see the activities, for instance, the guided tour here. So there's another way to navigate according to the current sections in the PDF guide, which is to click on the methods link here, and you can see the sort of the familiar sections of the Safetag guide available here, with some additional content, including the diagram for information flows. And you can see also that when you select an activity like user device assessment here, the browser, the activity browser will have the relevant category automatically checked for you. Okay, so I'll go back to the home page and I'll do a quick demo about how to change for instance, this activity title here that's actually not correctly set. So for this, I'll go to my text editor, and we can see that there's a @Safetag link and a Toolkit folder, and here in the activities folder you see the list of activities. So let's take a look at this, because this seems to be wrong, so let's try and fix it. You can see that in the lower left it tells me that actually this is check config files. So let's try and find that file and give it a title. So here, check config file, you see that that's a folder and it has an index.md file. So that's a markdown file here, and you see that there's a title, activity title, and here as well, activity title. So we're gonna have to edit that. So let's just call it check config files and do the same thing here. And let's see. Yep, there you go, automatically updated here. So that's it for a very quick demo. So let's review some of the concepts that are part of this toolkit and this general approach. Basically, we want the overall management of content to be lightweight. So we use text for everything. I was using the Atom text editor, but you can bring your own editor. And we use Git to keep a history of changes. And one of the goals here is that it's much more lightweight than a content management system, also more reactive and without needing a database or a server. So this approach is called content as code, and the idea is to use Markdown to do the text formatting and Git, as I just explained, and generate the site statically. And you can, of course, publish it on the web as well, but the idea here is that you can benefit from that on your computer, which, of course, means that it works offline. Overall, we want to separate the content from the code, so you can see that the idea is that when you take a look at your workspace here, you can see files that are basically content. There's a little bit of information that tells you which layout is used for the rendering, but generally you see that most of the things that you can see here are meant to be readable and correspond to content. All right, so let's go into a little bit more detail about how to set up this toolkit. So you're going to need Node. So you can download Node for your computer here. You are going to also need the latest version of npm. So once you have Node installed, make sure that you npm i-g npm. That's going to update npm with npm itself to the latest version. npm is the package manager for Node that will download bits of libraries, or in our case, content packages that are needed by the toolkit. And then you can install the latest version of Docsmith, which is the tool that's doing kind of the heavy lifting behind the scenes, and you can do so by doing npm -g that will install the tool Docsmith globally. And then another thing which I actually didn't include in this slide, you are going to need to also npm install globally Safetag. So let's do this. You see Safetag, my version is 0.22. Depending on when you try this, this might be another version. And this is going to give you access to the Safetag tool here. This should work on nodes 6, 7, or 8. And important to mention, I'm doing all this from OS 10. But this should work also on various flavors of Linux. Windows is not supported for now. Okay, so now that it's installed, you can launch a work session by using Safetag start, as we did before. So I missed something. Safetag init. Once you've installed Safetag, you need to initialize it. That's going to be needed only on your first use. And it's going to set up a workspace and download the content packages. So let's run this. So right now, my workspace has something in it. So let me remove Cape empty. And now let's Safetag init. So you see that it's asking me to confirm the location of the content repository, and that's going to go in my personal user folder in doc content. So I'll accept the default, and I need to type yes there to confirm that I'm going to initialize a workspace in the current directory. So you see here that it's actually going to go on the internet and download the content package from npm. It says here little upward hat 020. What that means is actually that it's going to download a package that's actually just a minor version change from 0.2. So in this case, 0.2.3 is going to be downloaded automatically. So that's basically makes sure that whenever someone initializes their workspace, they're going to have the latest version. So you can actually reinitialize your workspace later on, but you see that you're going to need to use --force to initialize it over an existing install. So later on, we might develop better upgrading facilities, but for now, if you just want to browse the content, then if you initialize with --force, that's just going to re-download the latest version of the toolkit. In the current folder, you see it creates actually a symlink to the .content folder. So when you're looking here at the workspace here, you see that that's actually a symlink, and that links to this toolkit folder with the index file, which corresponds to what's written here, and the activities folder, which corresponds to the activities, and the methods, which corresponds to the methods, and so on. So here you see that the concern has been to make sure to sort of move out of the way things that don't that are not content, so that it's straightforward and intuitive to navigate through this. There's a little bit of noise here, like the references and the document matter. This is probably going to be ironed out as the project progresses. Okay, so just a little note here. You see there's an audits folder. We're not using this right now, but I want to show you a little preview of a feature that we've been working on. Depending on your feedback, we might continue to develop this more. You probably noticed that there's an add button here. So if I add some activities, you see that there's a plan link here that updates. And if I click here, you see that actually I have the activities added to the sidebar. And right now we haven't put a duration for these activities, so the total duration is 0 hour. But you can see where this is heading. The idea is that this could help you sort of create an activity plan. And then exporting this activity plan, the idea would be that you could then use this to maybe tie into the work that Seamus is doing with the audit agreement, or that you could use a minimum viable audit template to create your plan and then adjust it. And that maybe you could use this also to take notes and do reporting. So what I was imagining maybe the user experience could be for that is that you could then download this file and put it inside the audits folder, and then it would automatically generate for you a new folder with a structure that would make sense, would be configurable, but would allow you to take notes, and so that you can then use that later to generate a report. So, okay, what next? And editing, the idea is that you can use your favorite editor. I'm using Atom, the latest version, 1.18, and I'm using a plugin called Markdown Preview Enhance and a language markdown. So language markdown allows you to have this content themed, so that you can see that bullet points have a different color and titles have a different color. The front matter here that has metadata for a particular file is also in a different color, so are links and whatnot. So that's helpful to sort of at a glance see what's happening with your content. Also using a mini map here, which is useful when you have sort of long files. I'm also using the Markdown Preview Enhanced, which is a really nice plugin that will do a number of things for you. Will sort of allow you to preview the content as you type it, and also it will sort of automatically check that your front matter makes sense. So if you do something weird here, then it will disappear, and that's good visual feedback to know whether you've maybe corrupted the front matter. So what else? Right, Markdown. I will refer you to a Markdown manual. There are a number of those. There is special syntax, and I've mentioned this before. It's transclusion. So transclusion is used to include content. So let's say this is an example where I have a file called index.md, and in there I would use a transclusion link, hi, the semicolon, and this is the Markdown syntax for a regular link. And you see here, this is supposed to be the destination file for a link, but because I've put a colon in front, actually what it's going to do is, instead of generating a link that you can click on, is actually going to transclude, therefore include the content from the file directly where the link is. So that will be rendered as hi Alice if main.md contains the Alice. So that's the key, that's the idea. It is used in other ways in the framework, but right now you can see it in action, for instance, in the methods as I showed before here. Okay, another point here is that you can use Markdown and modifying content to organize the content in ways that you like. So for instance, if you look at the browser here, you see that there's actually not just the framework categories facet here. There's also a few others like activity context. So those are not developed, but they're meant to give an idea of what this can be. And here, let me show you how this works. So let's say that so you can see that this has changed back to activity title because I've reinitialized the toolkit. I'll show you a little later how to actually publish that change. So, but for now we are dealing with categories. So let's take a look at how this framework categories is generated. So that's actually happening in the browse folder and categories. See that there's a framework.md file, and that's a file with a special syntax. So it actually matters the header level that you're using, and that will be parsed by the toolkit to generate the taxonomy. So if, let's say, I decide to say that conduct interviews would be something that would be done in the preparation phase, for instance, and I save this, we'll reload, and in preparation, the interviews are in there now. The reason why some of these other activities are not here is that because those links are not active yet. Okay, so let's just double check before saving that this browse folder and categories. See that there's a framework.md file. This was not in the context research anymore. It's not. And now if I move it back in the context research and save, context research now has the interviews in here. So you see that the idea here is that we want to try and avoid having menus or editing the database or whatnot to change the structure of the content, so that basically you can develop new categorizations that fit your the way that you think and the way that you work. You can see here, for instance, I was imagining that you could have an activity a categorization more based on activities or more based on where you are, if you're remote or on site, or the type of tool that you're going to need. So you can sky's the limit there. You can do whatever you'd like. But let's see how that would work if you'd like to create a new categorization. So here I have one where we could imagine that we want to do sort of a minimum viable template with some activities in here. So I would create a file called templates.md and make sure that it has a title here with only one chart for the top level header, and then two hash symbols will create a category called minimum viable. And then in those bullet points would add these activities into the minimum viable category. So let's see if we can do this. So that's the first step, and this should be more automated in the future, but for now you also need to go into a little bit behind the scene in the code to do a few changes so that the changes are picked up. So that's for now. this could be automated in the future if that's something that will make things easier. So let's go and open up the .content folder. So let's use --add to add it to the current workspace. So here in packages, you see that when I initialized Safetag, it actually downloaded Safetag Toolkit as a content package. And in here, there's a content folder, and that's actually exactly where the workspace points. So the Safetag Toolkit has content, but it also has code. But the idea is that mostly when you're working on content, you don't want to have the code in front of you. You just want to edit the content. So that's why the workspace points directly inside the content folder. So I'll just show this to you again. In the workspace, the @Safetag link is actually going to content package inside /content. So, but we need to modify the code. So for that, we need to go to the toolkit-start.yaml file. That's actually where the configuration for the static website generator lives. And right now I have to add templates to the list of fields that needs to be picked up by the search engine and the faceted search engine. Right, last thing I need to do is actually also go in the templates, another thing that could be automated later, and add a new field set for the criteria. Okay, so let's see. As updated, I think I need to restart this. Okay, templates, there we go, minimum viable. All right, and our two activities are in there, and you see that this has added the template here. Okay, so you can see this is still a work in progress, can definitely be improved, but I guess you can see the general idea here, which is to sort of give you more ability to sort things and categorize them the way that makes sense for you. Let's move on to the next thing. So how do we contribute back when we've made a change? We saw that earlier. Once we've made that change to the activity title, once we reinitialize the repository, it actually overrode our changes. So how do we contribute back? So this is not quite streamlined yet, and there's a little bit of fiddling on the command line that's needed, but this should give you an idea of how this works. So first thing is to go to the Safetag Toolkit GitHub repo and clone it. So if you have uploaded your SSH public key to GitHub, then you should be able to use the SSH method, but you can also use the HTTPS method to download and clone the repo if you just want to follow along and give it a test. I'm not going to do this right here, but I'm going to show you an existing clone repo, and you see here that it has a .git folder, which is actually used to track the history of your changes. So what we need to do is to point the Safetag Toolkit package to the version that you just cloned. So first thing first, we're just going to back up the default content package so that we can restore it later if we want to. So to do that, we can use this command, that's just going to back up the existing content package and into a folder called Safetag Toolkit.back. We could have moved it as well. Actually, now that I've copied it, I'm just going to remove it. I definitely should have moved it. All right. So now we are going to link, create a symbolic link. So with -s here. From the cloned version of Safetag Toolkit, which you've seen I've downloaded, I've cloned in this folder, and we are going to link this to the Safetag Toolkit. It's a typo here. I'll fix that in a sec. Okay, so let's do the symbolic link here. There we go. So now what happens? Well, as you see here in the workspace, it's still pointing to the same place. However, now if you go take a look at what's happening in packages, Safetag Toolkit now actually points to the place where I've cloned the repo. So let's make double sure of this by listing what's in here. So if you add a slash at the end, then that's going to list what's in the repo. Okay, so you see there's the .git here. Great. So what do we have? Well, I've made that change, so let's just make sure that when we start the toolkit, the activity title here is going to be updated. There you go, check config files. So I've made that change off camera, and here, there you go, it's here. Great. So it seems like our font matter is fine. So now I'll show you a little something with Atom, which is quite useful, which is that there's a Git tab. Right. So yeah, to have a Git tab, I actually need to do things slightly differently. I need to add this repo. There we go. There we go. And then it tells me there's a change that hasn't yet been staged nor committed. So Git has several phases. All right, so that's the change, and you see I've changed activity title to check config file. This will look good. I'm going to stage the file. I'm going to commit it saying fixed wrong title. Okay, I'll commit this, and now this is ready to push. So for those of you who prefer the command line, you can do all this with the command line, and here it's telling me that there's a commit, and in the commit log, oops, you can see that I have fixed the wrong title. Great. Okay, so now though, how do I publish this? Well, if you keep on working locally like this, then you can keep track of changes that you make, and you don't necessarily need to push them back. But if you do want to push them back, I'm just going to show the simple case where I have access to the GitHub repo. In other cases, you might want to fork the repo and create a pull request. I might go into this in another video. But I'll show you the simple case for now. So what I'd like to do ideally is not just push the change, but also publish a new content package. And actually, the current content package is version 0.2.3. And I would like, now that I've committed my change, to actually bump the version up. So I can do this with npm version patch. That's going to create a version 0.2.4. It's going to push the tags to GitHub. And so now GitHub should tell me that I'm with version 0.2.4. It's created a new release here. Great, but actually the thing is that it hasn't yet updated the npm registries. which is where the content package is really published. GitHub hosts the source code, but it's up to you to work on the source code, push your changes to GitHub, but then only once in a while publish the repo. And so I'm going to now use npm publish to publish the repository. Obviously, all of this is set up with my account. This would work differently if we have branches and whatnot. But there we go, just updated it. It's now version 0.2.4. Now, actually, when someone initializes the repo, they are going to get my change. Now, what next? Well, you can give us a bit of love by starring the repo. That's just to tell us that you like where this is going. But you can also let us know. Well, give this whole thing a try and let us know how it goes. So the presentation itself is published on GitHub, so you can go back through it, and it's actually a number of things that I didn't go through, and there's a little bit more details in the presentation, and so you can take a look at that. It's also available as a markdown file here, so you can go through sort of step by step and keep on adding to this as more detail are needed. And you can, of course, contribute issues and let us know if something went wrong, or if you'd like some new features, or if you have some ideas for us. And then another way to give us some feedback and let us know where you think this should head is to answer our roadmap survey, which is an anonymous SurveyMonkey survey, and on which you can let us know what should we prioritize. What are some of the things that you think we should put at the top of our list? And we are very open to the fact that this might be something different from what we've showed you right now. So don't hesitate to let us know this and give us more detail about what your ideal use for Toolkit would be. There you go. That's it for the video. Thanks a lot for your attention, and hope you will find this useful, and looking forward to hear your feedback. All right, this is Jim from iLab, working with Internews for Safetag, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.